Welcome back to Truth Seekers. So that's the law of attraction. You can do whatever you want. Donald Walsh, that was speaking there, as Tom McMahon said, the author of Conversations with God. I've got a quote here, Jay, but if you'd like to say something before I share this quote of Neil Donald Walsh's.
Well, about Neil, you know, it's interesting, Mike. He recognizes God, a creator, but yet he wants to be his own creator. And he says this creator did not give us a blackboard, but yet I got a blackboard sitting right here.
Good thing we do, too. But he gave us a law of attraction, right? So who is this creator that gave us a law of attraction?
Well, again,
when did he give it?
There's the ruler of this world, the prince of this world. And it goes all the way back to the garden with Eve when he gave her that law of attraction.
That's right.
Eve, you know, how does this look? You know, and it was all dealt with her feelings and attraction. What's going on today in The Secret? It's the same thing. The devil's been using the same scam.
You shall be as gods.
And that is the whole of the law as Aleister Crowley used.
And how different is Aleister Crowley's do what thou wilt from the law of attraction?
There's no difference, because it deals with the lust of the flesh.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's the kingdom of this world. But we all know, well, we don't all know, but the Bible tells us, Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. So there is no law of attraction with Jesus. He has fulfilled everything, and he is the creator, and he calls us to worship the creator, not to be a creator.
And Jay, we usually share with people how we know the strongest evidence that he is the creator, or a couple of them.
Well, you know, the law of attraction can't predict the future. But boy, they sure want to convince us we can think our way into bringing in that future. But our evidence is that the prophets that God set down here on the earth, and he brought his blackboard, delivered it right down to us here on earth through his prophets. And they said, oh, by the way, this is going to happen, these events, these places, these times. And how could you not you don't need any more greater evidence than that. When someone says what's going to happen in the future and it comes true, that is going to get my attention.
And it had to be 100% fulfilled prophecy, or they were supposed to be stoned to death. So if they were wrong once, they were supposed to be stoned to death. So
and that's what separated him from the devil's prophets, because they could predict some things. But God said, if you are of me, then do it 100% accurately.
Right.
And in other words, there are going to be false prophets out there.
Well, there are going to be a lot of people who are false because they want your money. TBN gives me that impression with a lot of the people who run that station.
And again, evidentially wise, Mike, there's been many proclamations on TBN about certain events at certain times that never did come true.
Right. Benny Hinn, he pockets over 100 million a year. 100 million, and his prophecies, false prophecies all over the place. He would have been stoned to death a long time ago.
And interesting enough, you mentioned Benny Hinn. I see a law of attraction there, because if you've ever seen his mansions and his Mercedes and his Rolexes, you know, that's very attractive.
Right.
And the devil wants us to have these kingdoms.
According to him.
But it's going to cost you your soul. And that we have to look at eternity here, Mike.
Yeah, if you're standing up in front of millions of people and lying, you know, to them about God, that's a pretty serious thing, because unlike Neil Donald Walsh, who says there is no judgment, God says there is a judgment, and the evidence is a lot stronger here than it is in The Secret. In his book, Neil Donald Walsh, in his book Conversations with God, he says, you are already a God, you simply do not know it. And that's on page 202 in Conversations with God. There are no such things as the 10 Commandments. That is on page 95 in the same book. So, you know, either the Bible's right or Neil Donald Walsh is right.
Well, I'm kind of confused here a little bit, Mike, because he's had a conversation with God, but God doesn't. God says just do whatever you want.
That's what he says. That's what Neil says. You know, and isn't that, you know, that's the same thing Aleister Crowley says, do what thou wilt, and he was a Satanist.
Okay, well, let me try to simplify it, at least in me trying to understand it. I'm a father, and I have children, and as a father, I want to protect them and give them good things, but at the same time, I'm just supposed to say, do what you want? So in other words, if there's a hot burner, hot stove, it's okay to touch it, you know, hey, go ahead. I'm not supposed to stop him from doing these.
Well, I don't remember them talking about children in the sections I
No,
saw. So maybe there's a special provision, a situation for children. I don't know. Haven't seen all of The Secret. I've seen enough to know that I'm not God, and that's the same lie that is started in the Garden of Eden, and the same lie that Jesus said would come in the end days when people came to us and said, we are Christ. Because Christ said, before Abraham was, I am. He said he was God in a number of different ways in a number of different places. So they're saying they're equal to him. And yet, he's a liar because, you know, he talks about the judgment, and Neil Donald Walsch says there is no judgment. So who's right? Is Jesus right, or is Neil Donald Walsch right? You know, they're real tricky, too. You know, that guy Beckwith, by the way, he's got this title, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith, whatever. Anybody with a Reverend Doctor in front of his name, I don't know about you, but, you know, maybe he needs an Esquire, Emperor, you know, throw that in too. Reverend Doctor, Emperor, Esquire, you know. I don't trust those people. I don't know about you. When they start to put all these little titles. Reverend, let's revere the Dr. Michael Beckwith who's giving you lies contrary to what the Bible says. Well, anyhow, this message is hitting our planet and the world in so many different ways. We've talked about it hitting through, you know, of course, Oprah Winfrey on her satellite radio program teaching, having Marianne Williamson, who channels spirits, teach this different Jesus spirit for a full year, teaching a different gospel, denying everything pretty much that's important in the gospel that Jesus gave in the Bible, changing it all around to fit this kind of stuff, that you're God and you can do whatever you want, the cross is irrelevant, all of that stuff. You know, so there's no need for judgment or whatever. So you've got her and Oprah promoting it through her, Marianne Williamson, on Oprah's radio station. Then Oprah doing this 10-week call-in on the internet live with, you know, 250,000, 500,000 people watching, could call in and talk to them, with Eckhart Tolle teaching the same thing, and teaching meditation. Now, meditation is the way, it's kind of like Ouija boards. You play with Ouija boards, you're going to attract familiar spirits. Meditation does the same thing. It attracts these spirits, and if you get into it deeply enough, and I got into it pretty deeply, and it was close, a lot of wild stories there, but you get demonized. Jesus talks about these spirits, these fallen angels, demons he calls them, and he casts them out of people. And I've seen that happen too. I've been around when that happened. So Satan's plan is, I want you to think you're as gods. I'm going to get you demonized. Because Jesus, you know, his arch enemy is Satan, trying to deceive the world. Jesus called him a liar, the father of lies.
Father of lies, yes.
And you know, Jesus cast those demons that worked for Satan out of people. And Satan wants everyone to be a slave of his. And he's doing a great job. You know, last week in the Oregonian, there was an article on meditation, and I've got it with me. A professor named Posner at the University of Oregon has been doing testing on the brain and seeing that, yes, meditation has some beneficial aspects to it. You know, interestingly, heroin has some beneficial aspects to it too at first. It makes you feel good for a little while, but then there's some negative consequences that come along with it. And if I can find that thing by that was in the article in the Oregonian, which I have here somewhere, I'd like to share a couple of thoughts about that with you, if I find it.